the Wright Perspective. Today, we're going to review a 1985 teen coming-of-age comedy drama, The Breakfast Club. This film was written, produced, and directed by John Hughes and stars Emilio Estevez, Anthony Michael Hall, Judd Nelson, Molly Ringwald, Sheedy, and Paul Gleeson. It had a budget of $1 million and a box office of, wait for it, $51 million. The New York Times placed this film on its best 1,000 movies ever list, and Entertainment Weekly ranked the film #1 on its list of the 50 best high school movies. Some would consider these accolades and that box office number enough to consider this movie a classic. But today, we will determine whether it is a classic from the Wright Perspective. We'll do a recap and we'll discuss the movie, and then we'll take a vote using a voting symbol picked especially for this discussion. But let's start with intros. Kick us off, bro.
Hi, I'm Aubrey Wright. I'm the oldest.
I'm Genia Wright. I'm the middle.
Hi, I am Brittany Wright, and I am the youngest. And I have on a hat.
You were almost normal. All right, let's keep it moving. It was so close. I was so excited. It was so
and
let's just keep going.
We're a podcast, so really it's rude to our primary audience. Also, it's
excuse
rude.
Me for trying to get them to come and look at our screen time as well. You're welcome. Now they all want to see what kind of hat I have on. Yeah.
That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. Y'all, we did The Breakfast Club, and I when it comes down to voting symbols for this movie was so clear and so thematically singular that I really could only come up with one voting symbol to recommend to y'all. It is probably the same one y'all are thinking of. It's the letter at the end. At the end of the movie, one of the students writes a letter. It's supposed to be, a 1,000-word essay. It clearly isn't, explaining, who they are. They were each supposed to do an individual essay, but instead they submit one combined essay, which is actually in the form of a letter to the teacher. And the letter sums up the theme of the movie, which is basically, we learned today that we are not as different as we thought we were when we walked in this morning. And I just thought, gosh, that letter is the literal, like that letter actually is the an articulation of the takeaway of the movie. So that is my recommended voting symbol, y'all, for The Breakfast Club. What do you get?
Let's do it. For me, I'm good with the letter.
You didn't come up with one, bro?
I had two that I kind of thought about. One was a pen, and I hate even saying this in front of Brittany, but the other one was a joint. But I'm saying neither one of them hit me. You know what I mean? But I'm like, the letter, that's good, because not only that, it was the start of the movie and the end of the movie.
Yes, so it was.
Everything was centered around it. So I'm definitely, yeah.
Yeah, that's good, because you all know I think of things on the fly, and I was thinking, what are we going to say? Desk, library, what symbol? And then I thought about his iconic fist at the end, but that wouldn't have, because that is an iconic moment, though. Yeah,
but it's not a symbol.
It's not symbolizing
but it's not
the entire movie. Yeah,
but when you see that, though, like when somebody sees that, they know.
It's
even
the
if they
Breakfast
don't know
Club.
Breakfast Club, they know that that's what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Totally. Yeah, y'all, the letter. Yeah, that was simple. I will tell you, bro, I could see the joint being a good option too, though, because drugs
they're everywhere.
They're
every which way.
They're in every movie. But the reason the joint could be good is because it really was, it enabled a good bit of the relationship building. So I could see that one, but the letter really just sums it,
And I'm gonna wait till later a little later on to go full Brittany. But the reason why the joint was interesting to me is it also represented a lack of fear of consequences, which I feel is very prevalent throughout this movie. But anyway, so it was more in it. I definitely
listen.
It was a key part of
from playing the music to everything.
Building but I'm just saying, it also was just a perfect representation of, you know, everybody in that movie is probably a senator right now. But anyway, I'm just saying. But anyway, I want to get into that yet. I want to wait until we start talking. So,
all right.
Well,
let's get into the recap then. Let's get in, let's get out. Okay, so we get to this top-notch chit chat. All right. All right.
You get on me about my hats, but that right there.
No. It was about you mentioning your hat, but all you were supposed to do was introduce yourself. Wasn't the hat itself? Just to be clear.
Touche.
Oh my gosh. People get such an insight into who we are. Okay.
How both of my siblings are
real. Wow. Okay.
This is going to be a good treat for the people who started watching us 10 years from now and they're going back through the catalog to find when we first got started when nobody was. It's going to be great. There'll be a great episode for people to email their friends like, this is when they were real.
Yeah.
Before they had to start doing ads in the middle of everything.
Yeah. Now Brittany wears that hat every episode.
But speaking of that, this tea is the best. No. I'm sorry, we're so off the rails.
So good.
Let's get back. We're getting back.
All right. So, The Breakfast Club. All right. Recap. And again, if you're new to our podcast, we say it at the top of every podcast, spoiler alert. Okay. Yep. Because most of the content that we recap and then review is old. Most of it is old. It's sometimes it's decades and decades old. And people have either seen it already, or maybe they haven't seen it in a while, or they haven't seen it, but they still want to enjoy the podcast. And so we do a full recap at the top that really does have all of the information, all the key nuggets. Okay, so let's hop in. The Breakfast Club. It is actually set on a Saturday in March of 1984 in Shermer, Illinois. And the whole movie takes place in one day and tells the story of 5 high school students that have to spend the day in detention under the supervision of their vice president. Over the course of the movie, you get a sense of why each of them were given detention. Claire Standish, who's played by Molly Ringwald, the princess, she's like dressed really fashionably, makeup done, eating sushi for lunch. She's in detention because she skipped class to go shopping. Brian Johnson, who's played by Anthony Michael Hall, he's the brain, nerdy because he was wearing glasses, a tight sweater. For lunch, he had a PB&J with the crust cut off, you know. He's in detention because a flare gun went off in his locker. Andrew Clark, who's played by Emilio Estevez, he's the athlete. And he's like wearing a Letterman's jacket. His lunch has like 15 types of carbohydrates in it. Okay. And he's in detention because he actually bullied a kid. John Bender, who's played by Judd Nelson, is the criminal. And you can tell because he is full of attitude and he's wearing a flannel. Okay.
He has a flannel shirt.
That's all you need. Flannel and like leather
gloves with no fingers.
And gloves with no fingers, baby. Flannel shirt, gloves with no fingers. That is the uniform.
And that haircut that's like down the middle.
Totally. Yeah, it's haphazard.
80s criminal.
Yeah. And he also looks older than everyone else in the movie. So in all the other high school kids.
You should have graduated 7 years ago.
Yeah, you behind. You know, he actually is in because he set off a fire alarm. And it turns out that Allison Reynolds, who's played by Ali Sheedy, she's the basket case. I mean, listen, she's making little random noises. She's mute half the day. Okay, eats sugar for lunch. She's wearing like 8 black sweaters on top of each other. Okay. And it turns out that she's only in detention because she had nothing else better to do that day. But of course, none of the stories are actually that simple. At the beginning of the movie, you get a sense that the kids know of each other, but they don't really have relationships. Claire and Andrew are popular kids and they run in the same circle. That's the princess and the jock. They run in the same circle, but you don't get a sense that they're actually friends, you know. And all the kids, they are just bracing themselves for a day of sitting in silence. The rules of detention at this school say that you can't do anything. You can't work, you can't read. You just have to sit there for an entire day and just think about what you've done. Literally, they're not allowed to do work, they're not allowed to do nothing. And then their vice principal, just to make the day super tricky, he tells them to write a 1,000-word essay. He says, describe to me who you think you are. Maybe you'll learn a little something about yourself. Okay. He is just like that bitter, leader that is just spewing all of his undone life list onto all of the young people. Just this bitter guy. Okay. And so he gives them this assignment, which is it's clear that that's not typically something that's done in detention, but he gives this assignment to these kids. And most of the students are clearly ready to just make it through the day and just get through it and move on. But one, John Bender, the criminal, he just would not stop getting everyone riled up. He just kept picking on all of them and saying mean things, spitting, knocking stuff off the desk, standing on the furniture, touching everybody. At some point, he calls someone a neo-maxi Zoom dweeby. What is that? He even goads them into pulling some trickery on the vice principal. It ain't good. Okay. He goads them into pulling some trickery on the vice president and then sneaking around the building when they're supposed to stay in the detention room. He has them smoking weed. At some point, Bender is mocking Andrew, the athlete's home life. And Andrew snaps back. And he essentially says that, Bender is a fraud, which actually prompts Bender to tell some stories about his home life, including, stories of his parents being drunk and abusive, including one where someone actually burnt him with a cigar. And he actually shows them the scar. And then, of course, he storms off to the back of the detention room. And you can tell he immediately regretted sharing that part of himself. But of course, it helped the other students to understand his tough guy facade a bit more. And eventually they all start opening up. Claire, the princess, she shares that her parents aren't physically abusive, but they really don't seem to like her or care about her very much. They put her in the middle of fights and basically they just use her to get back at each other. And also, while she understands that her popularity is coveted by other students and that she should appreciate it, and she does on some level, she really isn't comfortable with it. She feels so much pressure to just go along with the group or risk losing her place. So you get a sense that going out shopping was not something that she actually wanted to do during the school day. Andrew, the athlete, also shares about the pressure he feels to stay on top. And it's not just his classmates, it's his father. His father puts so much pressure on him to be the best athlete and to be a cool dude that Andrew actually bullied a kid just to have a story to tell his father. Okay. Anthony, the brain, he shares that the only reason he had a flare gun in school was actually because he had planned to kill himself. His parents put so much pressure on him and he put so much pressure on himself to get perfect grades. And usually he does get perfect grades, except for this semester because he's failing shop class. He can't make a ceramic lamp. And finally, Allison, the basket case, reveals that her parents really just ignore her completely. And so all the things she does, dressing in black, acting insane, stealing, she does all of it just to get attention from them, from anybody.
Man, she was stealing everything.
Just stealing anything laying
no one
around.
Noticed it.
And still, with all this acting out and all this trying to get attention, she still has no friends. She's so lonely, in fact, that detention was her best option for the day. And by the end of the day, because of the revelations they've shared, they admit that they have become friends, but they also understand that their social rankings in the school might make those friendships impossible to keep come Monday morning. Can a jock hang out with a geek? Can the cool girl hang out with the girl in the back that talks to herself? So, there is a romance that sparks between the athlete and the basket case, and a romance that sparks between the princess and the criminal. But it's hard to tell if those relationships will even have a chance because of the social dynamics of school. And when detention is almost done, they realize they haven't written their essays. And they elect the brainy guy, Brian, to write one essay for all of them. He agrees, and he writes a letter to the vice president, the vice principal, and essentially says that, all of them doing one essay together made sense because they had realized during the course of the day that they realized that they actually had a ton in common, even though they had been brainwashed by their experiences to think that their lives were worlds apart. And, I can't take credit for the little monikers for each of the characters. Brian, the brainy character, actually assigned each of them those labels in that letter to the vice principal: the princess, the athlete, the brain, the criminal, and the basket case. And at the end of the movie, they leave with that kind of relief that people experience after they've had a therapy session. But you can't help but realize that they are all walking right back into the circumstance that had driven them to that place to begin with. And so it's one of those endings that's optimistic, but isn't really, because we haven't actually solved the problems. So the end.
Sis.
That was it.
That's it.
That was it.
We're done here, because I wish I would have just talked to you and not watched that movie.
So
I was in it like, the what? Now, what did Claire do to get in detention?
She skipped school to go shopping.
Skipped school to go shopping. Okay.
Yeah, that was actually the first one that they revealed. The very first one, because she was in the car with her dad getting dropped off.
Yes.
When we figured out why she was in. The rest of them, it came out slow. It came out more slowly.
That's why I forgot.
That's why you forgot. It was at the very top. It was like,
I don't know why she's in there.
I know. But again, I was doing my top-notch note-taking.
Yes.
So that's why I caught that nugget.
You did. And I did not know why the criminal was in there either until you said it. I was like, you pulled a fire alarm?
The vice principal
came out when I fell asleep.
The vice principal said it to him. He was basically saying, you don't take yourself seriously. You don't even take alarms seriously. You don't understand. Like you pulled an alarm. That's a you need consequences.
Yeah, that's why you're here for the next 2 months.
He said, that's another Saturday.
I was like, another?
I'm like, that's the whole school year. We're pretty much done here.
He always plays a jerk. The guy who played
Paul Gleeson.
Yeah, Paul Gleeson.
Mm-hmm. And I didn't mention him much in the recap, but that was a whole little sub storyline of there were 2 adult characters
in the building.
In the building during the detention day. One was the vice principal and one was the janitor. And the students, not all of them, but the students end up mocking the janitor for being a janitor, only for him to kind of say, oh, listen, I have some power that you may not understand. And it's by being here and being present and seeing all of you. I know all of you better than you think I do. And then we see that the vice principal, in a conversation with the janitor, we start to understand how much everything that he's doing with the students is a defense mechanism, because he feels so out of place and so insecure, and he feels like the students don't respect him. And so everything that he's doing that comes off as like this meanness and this domineering, it's really just him trying to be relevant for them, because he just feels like they don't care. They're not listening to him. They disregard him. So yeah, this was like a therapy day for everybody. Really.
It was deep.
It was. And this was one of those movies that was just on TV we didn't have cable growing up. So Breakfast Club was just on regular TV all the time. All the time, you know. So, bro, I mean, you might have seen it before me and Brittany did. Well, Brittany, this was your first time seeing it though, right?
Yeah, because it made me laugh thinking about that it came out like the year I was born. I was like,
Yeah.
oh.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. And like your reaction, I'm very curious because like we earlier on, we started and I stopped her because I was just curious to hear the next thing she was going to say, and I just felt like it should be during the podcast. So what was your? It seemed like you had a very visceral reaction.
First of all, I was chuckling because our conversation from Greece, and we were like, is everyone in this high school like coming back? Like they're 30 and then decided to go to college, high school again? Like, I was like, two of these people look like they're actually in high school. The rest of you, questionable.
Yeah,
so
I don't think they were far off in age.
Yeah, I don't think
they
it was.
weren't,
it was bad, but they weren't as egregious as some of the other examples.
Right. They weren't as bad.
Right.
They definitely weren't.
The gray hair in Judd, is that his name?
Listen, yeah, Judd, that was his cool kid streak. That was a cool kid streak.
But he got a gray patch. But the thing is, though, that is one part of, because I'm thinking of one guy particularly in high school who was definitely known to be older than.
Oh, we had one too.
Everybody.
We had
so
one.
Everybody has that one.
Oh man.
Yo, yeah, we graduate, yo. I need you to graduate.
Yeah,
that
rang true. Yeah, totally.
Listen, so I liken this similar to when I was watching Lethal Weapon. My idea of Lethal Weapon at the time was that it was going to be a comedy. And then when I watched, I said, this is quite dramatic. And then I'm watching The Breakfast Club with the idea that, oh, this is like an 80s comedy. And I was like, I am sad for these people. We're the social workers. This teacher is terrible. I was like, how is he climbing on through the ceiling right now? And no one knows it. He rises through the ceiling. I was like, all these children are being abused. Is anyone's parent nice? I was like, what is happening right now? I was like, and this little girl's a psychopath. I texted my brother and sister. I said, two of these people look like they're going to shoot up the school. I said, I said, this movie is sad.
So
it's tragic.
It's tragic. It caught me off guard. So they're just seeing that it was going to be a more serious road than it was. That really caught me off guard. I've never heard The Breakfast Club described like that. I just always, it just being a cult classic. And then I've seen these other people do things that were funny. And even like I noticed them from stuff that was later on, like Emilio Estevez. I knew him from Mighty Ducks.
Mighty Ducks.
So that
say that
those are my frame of reference. You know what I mean? So it was like watching them do this. I was like, this is really sad, y'all.
Yeah.
Snap, crackle, and pop. What is going on here? And then also him not sitting in detention with them also was weird to me. And the one part that I just need to say this, because I still remember it. I was so annoyed when Molly Ringwald got there at the beginning, which I want to point out, I thought it was really cool how they made the popular girl be a redhead. I think that is huge. I don't know if they did that on purpose.
Well, Molly Ringwald was an it girl at the time.
Yeah.
She was actually in high school.
She was the deal.
Molly
Ringwald was the deal.
She did such a great job.
Yeah, she was the deal.
When I looked up her age, the thing I thought about, I said, whose vagina was that they showed on the TV? Because I was like,
panties.
But it was panties, but I was like, she's a high school student. It couldn't have been hers. So who was that person that stood in for that? Because it wasn't hers. So I just kind of chuckled at that, like she was young. That wasn't her situation. But I thought like just seeing her be the it person, I thought that was really a thing. But the part that annoyed me was she came in first, and then Emilio Estevez character, who is it, Brian? No, that was the gang member. Who was the other one? The Jock.
He was
when
not
the Jock came in. He was not in the gang. Okay.
Well, they didn't say he was in a gang.
He was in
And Andrew Clark was the athlete.
Yes, the athlete. When he came and sat down at the same table as her, I was so annoyed. And the reason why I was annoyed was because there are 4 other tables, 5, I think, that he could have chose from. Why did he sit with her? And it made me annoyed because I was like, why do people do this? Sit at the other table. I don't have to ask you if it's okay to sit here because I have 5 other tables to choose from. I was so annoyed. I was like, what is this?
You could kind of tell they were in the same circle, though.
Yeah, that's what would have happened. They were both.
They're both in the popular crowd.
Yeah. She's the popular chick. So just how it would be in high school, they acquiesced at the same table.
Well, that's actually, it leads me actually to a discussion question I have for y'all. It's like, did these people ring truthful to you, or did they seem tropish? This is what I'm trying to figure out, because I'm not going to lie to y'all. In my notes, I actually made a table, and the table has each of their names across the top, and then it has their moniker, why they were in detention, what they said about their parents, what they ate for lunch.
Genia thing to do.
Well, but the point, like what they had on right now, what they had on.
Right.
And
I feel like you need to screen share right now because this is important for us to keep for history. This table that you made about
because I need people to know it's real. Okay. Oh my gosh. Well, the reason it's relevant though is because there you go. Can you see it?
It's coming up.
And as you can see,
yes.
This is Janaya.
Y'all, the reason it's important though is because what you start to realize is that they went so far as to make make their lunches match their personality.
That's right.
Claire could have just had a sandwich, but instead she had sushi.
That's right.
Hey, but she had sushi. She had a little glass bottle of soy sauce.
Right.
Oh, come on.
That's right.
I said, girl, you didn't have a
and then the basket case, she couldn't just have like potato chips. She had a sandwich. She took some, I think they were called pixie sticks back in the day.
The pixie.
She put some pixie stick sugar on them, cereal, crumbled it up, mashed it together, bit into it. Captain Crunch.
The mayo was still on that sandwich. I want to be clear about that, y'all, because I looked.
It was some of those things though that made me feel like it made it less. It took some of the responsibility away from the actors because they were so clearly in a type. And but so anyway, it just led me to kind of wonder, like, are they actually ringing true to me, or are they just tropish? What are y'all's thoughts on that? Were they too?
It's a great question.
Well, what do you think, Britt?
I felt like she was the only one. Her and Bender, John. I feel like they were the two that were the extreme. I feel like Brian, Andrew, Claire, they all were, kids that I would understand, and I knew them, right? I knew them in high school. I knew them in middle school. I didn't know their backstory, but I knew those people. I would see someone like Ali Sheedy. What's her character's name? Thank you for my
Allison.
Thank you, Allison. I would see someone like an Allison, but they would just have on all black and eating regular food.
Yeah.
Like it just, when I saw her doing that, I was like, this has to be for comedy or just something that's so outlandish. Like, I thought it was enough for her just stealing random things. Like when she stole the knife and nobody noticed. I thought that was enough. I was just like, what? And then for her, but her doing that with the Captain Crunch, I said, there is nobody that actually eats like this.
Yeah.
This is disgusting. And so but I understood. So, and I felt like he was just the most like, John, all right, we get it. You're the cool kid. Everyone should be afraid of you. At this point, sit down. You're talking. You're doing too much. Like, fine, we should be afraid. We're scared. Sit down. Like, I don't want you to talk anymore. You're annoying at this point. So yeah, I felt like those were the only two that extra was happening. But the other three, I thought that they were, they were pretty spot on.
Mm-hmm.
Watching this movie as an adult was a very interesting experience for me. And I think the question
Aubrey just probably wanted to spank all of them.
Well, I'm gonna tell you, growing up, like one of my favorite albums, and this, I know I'm going a little left for a second, but one of my favorite albums of all times is Jagged Little Pill. By
Alanis Morissette.
And the reason why Jagged Little Pill was one of my favorite albums of all times is because I did not grow up as a Catholic girl in Canada, but I feel like I got a good understanding of what it was based on the effectiveness of that art. I feel like she gave me a peer into her world. And like, I think that what makes movies like this good is that somebody could watch Friday from outside of that community and think that there's no way that this happens,
right.
Like I'm sure, but those of us who are in the community realize there were a few things that were exaggerated, like, somebody gets punched, they're usually not gonna fly, 10 feet in the air and all of that. But this movie is pretty close to a day. This is pretty close to, it's a movie, so
it's plausible. It's very plausible.
But so this movie is a pretty good period to a day in the life. And I think that in a lot of ways, it's not even for us to say if it rang true, because we can look at the success of it and realize that it rang true for a lot of people. And what I'm saying is there are things that happened in the movie that did not make sense to me, but because the examples I'm thinking, what happened to the ceiling? Like nobody did, because at one point he was crawling through the ceiling and he broke the whole ceiling. And there was another part where he unscrewed the door. There was another part, so it wasn't working anymore. There was another part where after they were dancing and the jock screamed and broke the glass. And I'm saying I got away with some mischief as a young person. But this level of mischief, I had to stretch my suspicion.
He tore a book apart.
In the middle of, and look, this is the point I'm trying to make, is that it's funny because I think whoever was watching this, the target audience, they probably didn't notice that stuff because like they're probably thinking of some time where they did something crazy and it just got fixed. And like for them, the ultimate experience of the punishment is detention. Like none of them, it didn't even, you had one of them was, Jock was kind of worried about his scholarship. But outside of that, like they're living in the bad result of or the I'm blanking
the consequence.
The consequence. But they're living in the consequence already. And that's it.
Yeah.
But the point, so I'm just saying to answer your question, I feel like we gotta peer into a world that probably rings very true. Like I wouldn't be surprised if everything that happened came from some kind of round table where they were like, all right, let's tell real stories about what happened in our high school experience that we could put into this movie. And I wouldn't be surprised if all of those stories, because if you look at the high school, you could tell us rich, like everybody who's walking in there, you could, so I'm just saying, for me, I felt like this probably rings truer than I realized. So that's how.
I really appreciate that, bro. And with that level set that you've just given, it I can now, like, I see I'm picking up what you're dropping, because one thing I do remember about high school, and I see it now when I interact with high school age people and even 20s, people in their early 20s, where they are just thinking everything is so serious and they think
Everything.
everything is about them. And there's something in that for me was truthful, in that these kids felt like, and I don't want to ever make light of abusive parents. Okay. So that, and I think when a young person says they are being abused, so I'm not saying that, but I am saying that when I look back and I think about some of the ways that I thought adults were coming at me, they weren't, it's just, and then some of the things that felt so serious. Think about love in high
Yeah.
school. You thought it was real. You don't know what you're doing. You don't even know yourself in high school. But if you say that to a person in high school, they can't understand what you mean because they don't have the context and experience of time. And so for them, the only dynamics that they've really had to struggle with in terms of interpersonal relationships are parents and teachers. And so, and like aunts, uncles. And so they have these extreme emotions and reactions to those people. So it's like, oh, my parents are ignoring me. It made me want to roll my eyes. But at the same time, I, you know, I there were things that our parents did that at the time felt so pressureful, you know. And I was definitely not one of the cool chicks in school, you know. I got along with the cool chicks, but no one would have put me over in that crew, to be clear. I know that's very surprising to our listeners, because because most people who meet me think, wow, she's so hip. But no, I wasn't in high school.
Oh,
And
they use that word.
well,
You're happening.
The point is, though, it resonated
You
for
have a
me.
flannel.
Flannels were in the 90s, though, to be clear.
Yeah, they were.
I had made flannels. You know, Claire feeling all of that pressure to be who everybody was telling her to be, because she knew that she could be it. And because she could be it, and it was like a privileged thing to be, that she should be it, you know? And instead of just saying, I'm not really into it, I'm walking away. That resonated for me. You know, there was a type that I became at some point. And when you take that and then, bro, add on what you said about the fact that our lives just have a distance from the experiences that are shown in this movie, then I can say it's truthful. You know, but to your point, Britt, about Bender, he walked into the library throwing stuff off the table. Nobody was even talking to him or looking at him. And he's just like making a mess in the room.
What is happening right now?
Yeah. But I do though.
What?
I remember kids in high school that were just constantly acting out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you like we've talked about before, especially like when we talked about like in The Wire, when we talked about just like knowing those types of kids, it makes me think about those kids that were always the ones joking. They were always the ones, you know, having to have some type of outlet or, you know, be a certain way. And you're like, you can look back on it and go, what was actually happening? What was going on at the home? What was happening at the home? And so I was even though Bender and Allison were like, okay, that's enough now, you guys. The other side of it is that I believed all of their backstories. Like all of their backstories were very much like, okay. I think about though the jock and the criminal and them doing things that are actually impacting other people. You shouldn't be trying to hurt yourself either. But when you are getting physical towards other individuals, this is where we have to really draw a line. This is where we have to really figure out what's happening here. And so I think about, okay, they're in detention, write a 1,000-word essay, vice principal, you're in another office doing work and not paying them any attention. And you you're in this moment, I would think that maybe you would want some sort of therapy going some sort of programs. Why are you doing this? Like, let's have a conversation, but you're dismissed from them just like their parents are. And I know that is a lot of pressure on administration and teachers and stuff, but that's why teachers and people who are in education, you're so special and should be valued more, because you're the next line of defense for these children to know that they're important. Because how you are in that community is not your defining factor. And it doesn't have to be, and we could say that for many communities, right? But we know that your opportunity to break a window in a library and then just go get in your dad's truck is far different. The ramifications.
Nobody addressed any of the stuff.
All just walked
that
out.
happened.
Even Claire kissing the criminal in front of her dad's car,
leaning on her father's car.
I said, oh, okay then.
Both of the couples kissed in front of parents.
I was just like, nobody, y'all don't care about this right now, because I would have never.
Well, and what's else, it was like, this movie honestly ended up being a lot better to me than I remembered. Because
that's different.
What we're talking about right now, with the whole point of the movie, first of all, it was a simple movie. Very easy
that's our
to
brother's
watch.
Favorite.
well, I'm saying nowadays people are getting so deep into, like, I just watched The Eternals. It has 10 main characters. You know what I mean? Like, you're like, it's just hard to, but not 10 main characters in the way that this movie has. It's like they're trying to develop all of this different stuff.
Yes.
We just got a little piece of everybody's story, but enough of a piece that we felt everybody's story.
Yes.
And I like that. And I like that, I mean, it's only like a 90-minute movie, but the implications of it is, and I like how they were doing it on purpose. They were like, look, we're going to make a movie about how everybody's story can kind of map on everybody's story.
Yes.
In different ways. And what I'm saying is that if you extrapolate that out, because we can make a Black version of The Breakfast Club with our version of all of those types, we would, because Janiyah would be a type up in there. Brittany would be a type up in there. Like, there would be types that we could all be sitting in a room and brainstorming, like, oh, remember the time that this happened, and then we can make a movie like that. So the point I'm trying to make is yes, the real world consequences of these lives are definitely worldly different, but it's also interesting that the part that we can map this experience onto so many of us.
Bro, it's funny you should talk about kind of like adapting this to a Black space. I watched a interview on YouTube where it was either the 25th or the 30th anniversary of this movie. And so they were interviewing the actors, and Molly Ringwald and Ali Sheedy, they asked them, they were like, what are your thoughts on there being a remake? Would you want this movie to be remade? And they both were like, no, we don't need a remake. And Molly Ringwald's reason was, she was like, I could see an adaptation. She said, but we don't need a remake. She said, one big problem is that the movie is just so white. She was like, it's just so white. And she said, so if somebody can adapt it and make it more diverse, then yeah, I would be supportive of that. But we do not need a remake.
This would be one movie where I would actually be curious to see a whole Black cast.
With just the concept. But not
the concept
of
having to spend a whole day in-house, that's what they used to call it. It'd be like, it would be cool to see a whole Friday spent in-house or something
Yeah.
with the Black cast. And it would be, I think that is a movie, but I wouldn't want it to be too far. Like, I wouldn't want it to be it would just be, this is this situation in a Black school.
That's it.
And I think that would be interesting.
I think so too.
But see, the one thing that would throw me off is that it would have to be a little bit imaginative, because I don't know any vice principal of any school that I've ever been to that is allowing that amount of noise to happen when you're supposed to be silent.
Well, we would have to, you're right. We would have to find a way.
We would make it real for that context. Just
exactly.
For that context.
Yeah. It would have to be, because even now, just spitballing, it would be something where maybe that person had to leave, like there was a car accident or something, they had to go, so I'm just saying, like,
and in general, we don't value idleness. Like, I couldn't see just sitting, and actually just thinking about, you would have to do homework, make up somebody's project, you need to do some community service, you need to paint a wall.
The thing is that
what was the tension like?
Well, first of all, neither one of you I know went to.
I had detention one time for tardies because I was late coming back from my club meetings.
It's funny. I know.
Listen,
I just
heavy as the head.
I know you.
Heavy as the head.
Listen,
I know you want to tell me the
crown?
truth,
Teachers,
and that was your own, but I still don't believe you. But
I got in trouble for talking too much in class.
Did you go to detention?
I had detention, but I remember doing
Brittany.
homework.
I don't think I did.
Exactly.
But I felt in trouble.
I think my sisters
you got
have
scolded.
Have had a combined 2 spankings in your whole life. Did you?
Well, we weren't troublemakers.
I don't even think you ever got one.
I got one. I talked in a movie. I think it was Bambi, and I felt it was dumb. And I said it out loud.
Wait.
For talking to you guys.
I said something loud.
Y'all. All right, now I understand your view source ranking. That's
y'all.
I don't remember what I said, but it was really something that really made our parents frustrated. And they were like, "You're gonna get a spanking when you get home." And I went home and I hid all the belts. Like, I ran in the house and I tried to hide the belts and hide. I remember hiding all the belts and the shoes, but I still got a spanking.
Listen, I want a podcast land. We just need to divert for just a smidgen of a second. You have to understand how much my sister hates when people talk in the movies.
I never made that connection.
She hates it.
I do, y'all.
Like, she despises it, and I still do it when I sit beside her, even though I know she's going to shush me.
And I don't respond.
And she doesn't respond. That's why I go to movies at 10 o'clock in the morning when I'm by myself so I can talk, because I can't stop myself.
But sis, that connection, that's valid.
That's PTSD, girl.
That's something to interrogate.
That's PTSD.
That's something for me to interrogate.
But to answer
I'm taking that right to therapy next week.
To answer your question, I could see a movie based in-house detention for
what was it? What was detention like?
In-house
was it fun a little bit though?
In-house was
like it was
I imagine people making beats on the table like it's lunchtime.
No, you could do that, but you could
you're thinking of Sister Act
all your homework.
Oh, thank you.
You get caught up on all your homework, and if everybody was being cool, then whoever was running it, because they would be bored too. I mean, it now as an adult, as a 43-year-old adult now, I know that sitting in that room all day must have been crazy. But
why did y'all have to be bad kids?
Right? So they would let you talk if everybody was being cool. So and there were, and during lunch hour, you have to go get your lunch before lunch started, bring it back, and you would eat in-house, and then you could talk. So I'm just saying, I could see somebody turning up you know, you got to turn up the tropes a little bit because it's a movie. But like, I could see somebody turning up the tropes and having, and not going too far though, because if they were in there and it was just like, you know, like the way they did, I know neither one of y'all probably saw these movies, but the way they did those Black stereotype Transformers in the Transformer movies, you know, I have a high level of tolerance, but it actually stopped. I can't watch those movies anymore. I don't know how anybody.
It'd be like, we beat Bob and skip scabbing. Like it was
like unbelievable.
These are clearly Black.
I cannot believe that nobody talks about it. I can't believe it got through. But the point I'm trying to make is,
but they died.
There will be a limit.
Surprise.
There will be a limit. But if done right, that's actually a movie that will be.
You know what, bro? After you said that, I could now see the vice principal being, and of course, I'm thinking she's a Black woman already. And I'm just like, I see her coming in like, listen, I didn't want to be here today either, and I know y'all don't want to be here. Let's all just get through this damn day so we can go home because I have a date at 7:00. Okay.
I could also see a teacher coming in and bringing activities and saying, you know what, guys, we're going to make this a day of enrichment.
Yeah.
And annoying
because if Janai was a teacher, that's what she would do.
Those are the teachers
and the other.
Let's step away from the textbook.
Me as a teacher,
let's step away from the textbook.
And I'm gonna tell you the other thing. Like, do you remember Denise?
The security guard.
Okay, so
was the freaking greatest.
So I could see somebody being like Denise.
Yes.
And the thing about Denise was in a situation where she impacted a lot of lives in ways that people probably don't even know. You know, like when I was in school, I got into one moment where I was tagging on walls. And like you have these thick paint markers, and one of my boys got caught doing it, and it was like this big thing. And whatever your tag name was, the thing was to make a little pin. So I had like a pin with my tag name, and I'm tagging the wall, and she caught me with the marker and she just looked at me and she was like, because she knew Dad, and she was like,
and Mom. I'm sure she knew Mom because Mom was a teacher.
Absolutely. But in this context, she was like, what would your dad think? And it was interesting because she never told. She didn't turn me in. And I think she just had the wisdom to see that the thought of this was enough to like
to deter
I'm gonna give him another chance.
Yeah.
And
you know when someone is a good kid.
And I'm just saying, but the point I'm trying to make is that if we were writing this movie, there would definitely be a character called Denise that
definitely.
I'm just saying.
But that what you just talked about, that goes back to a conversation we were having off camera, y'all. Earlier, we were talking about how in medical circumstances, we know that doctors don't necessarily listen to Black people as carefully when they're white, when the doctors are white. We know that Black people don't always get as good of care, even if they are clearly articulating what they're experiencing. Doctors are less likely to believe Black people when they say that they are sick, in pain, having a certain symptom. And it's just it's just that it's a distance in terms of being able to give someone the benefit of the doubt, or just being able to forgive or to listen. And anyway, bro, what you were just talking about, it made me think about if someone adapted this, but it wasn't like a Black school or a white school. It was, a racially diverse school where you got a chance to see race play out in the relationships. That would be really interesting.
Well, I mean, the thing is,
especially if you throw in like power,
that could literally be a well, here's the thing, and I know we're getting deep talking about this non-existent movie, but I'm just saying the high school we all went to,
we should make it.
Shenley was a good example
It
of
was.
what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But the
It was
thing
racially
about
diverse.
the thing about the suspension though, everybody didn't show up in suspension.
Mm-hmm.
So that part of it,
Yep.
see, in that school, that's probably how suspension would look. But
totally.
But
because if you look across the teachers and the fact, like, the whole administration didn't reflect the diversity of the students.
And I'm saying, like, for example, getting caught skipping school might not have landed you a circumstance in our school. You know what I'm saying? Like, it might not have. So I'm just saying, I think that it's interesting, but I think that a movie placed in Westinghouse would be more interesting than placed in Shenley.
Yeah,
basically.
I think you're right. It just, especially as a juxtaposition to this,
That's
to the Breakfast Club. I appreciate that, bro.
Yeah.
And it actually leads me to another thing I wanted to ask y'all about, is the way that sex was handled in the movie. And, you know, the way that it was like, you're still a virgin. Anyway, it was just like, I wanted to know how that landed for y'all, the way that the high school kids were talking about sex or trying not to talk about sex. You know, in some ways they were talking about it in a pressureful way. You know, the geeky kid didn't want to admit that he was a virgin. The popular girl didn't want to admit that she was a virgin. You know, the jock never said either way, you know. And then, you know, we all just got this impression that, you know, the criminal had been around. But anyway, I just wanted to get your thoughts and reactions to the way that sex was discussed among these students. Did it resonate for you? Truthful?
It kind of made me laugh a little bit when I saw the movie was rated R. When it first came on, it was like rated R for sexual.
That movie rated R?
And it was like sexual content. And I said, is they finna have sex up in the school? I said, what is going on in Japan?
There is no way that movie was rated R. What
made it rated R?
Look it up. Look it up right now. It was said rated R.
I wonder what made it rated R.
Was it showing Molly Ringwald's panties? Like, what was it?
It was that,
because I want to say drug use, but they didn't show them using the drugs.
They did show them smoking it.
Oh, they did. That's probably what did it.
That's what did it. Oh no, they showed them. They showed them actually.
Yeah. But they listed. I think it was like drug use, sexual content. And when I saw the word sexual content, I said, sexual content. Ooh. I said, what they doing up in this school? What's about to go on in this movie? And so when I saw what the sexual content was, I said, that makes me laugh. I was like, this is such an 80s movie. Because right now, this movie is like rated G. And so they're smoking on the Disney Channel. And so
they're smoking on the corner outside.
Listen, right now. And so I thought about, though, that was a ton of sexual harassment that he was throwing at, that Bender was throwing at Claire. I was like, to the point I was like, okay. And I was happy that the jock stood in. I was happy that he was like, all right, that's enough. But he did let it go on for a little while. And I was like, the 5 minutes ago wasn't enough? Okay, that's cool. And so, but them being so, it's just high school students being so obsessed and so curious about sexual statuses and things like that. But here's the other side of it. That's really when your hormones are like, they're popping. And so them having the way they dealt with sex, I felt was like really normal for how high school kids.
I felt the same way.
In my experience, it was the conversation they were having surrounding it actually reminded me almost exactly of a conversation I had in middle school. But in high school, it seemed like sex was more of a assumed part of what was going on.
Got it.
Like it did. But in middle school, I remember having that conversation because there was a substitute teacher, and I can remember it Exactly. I can remember it was a substitute teacher and everybody was talking. It was in one of those music classes. I don't know if y'all remember in Frick, the rooms that had the multiple levels.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And we were sitting in there. And
listen, while you were in in-house suspension, we were in chorus.
No. Yeah. So this was, so
funny because it's true.
And everybody's talking about, like, back then the term was a V. Are you a V? And I just remember thinking, like, I didn't have a context, but I'm thinking, like, I'm 11 though. I know everybody is and so I'm saying I remember that being in that space of, like,
really?
And now I know that everybody in the room was lying. But I'm just saying, like, at the time, I was just sitting there thinking, like, and I remember, like, trying to dodge the conversation. I don't know exactly what I did, but, like, I'm saying, so just like they were trying to do, I remember. So yes, the conversation rang very true. In my experience, it had been a middle school conversation, but it's still the conversation itself. Yes, rang very, very true.
You know what, bro? As you say that, it makes me kind of go, like, thinking about having that conversation in middle school and everyone being like, oh, are you doing it? Are you doing it? But then everyone being so like, such and such is pregnant in high school. It's like, y'all can't have it both ways. If we having the sex in middle school, then we're going to keep on doing it. And then this brings babies.
You gotta go to
this man, is it, you got, like, this happens, like, our high school, you got podcast world had a daycare in the basement. So, like, that was our high school.
Yeah. And I remember boys pretending they had sex with girls they hadn't had sex with. And I remember girls pretending they hadn't had sex when they had, because we were told, like, we were trying to be pure. They were trying to be sexual. Everybody was lying. Everybody was lying because of
the point is that's the point.
That's the point.
The point is that they're showing that these experiences map onto everybody's life. It might be in a different way a little bit, but yeah, like, if they brought the Breakfast Club back as is, I think that I wouldn't want to see that. But, like, if they did a polar opposite, I would be interested to see that.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you one other thing, in addition to, like, what constitutes a rated R being, okay, that's definitely the 80s. The way that the teacher treated Bender.
Listen.
Y'all, that teacher locked him in a closet for what he thought was like 4 hours. We know Bender got out by crawling through the ceiling, but
in 5 minutes.
He thought he locked him in a closet, yelled at him, threatened him. Now, again, we also knew that he wasn't under 18. So the teacher knew that he was talking to somebody who was older, but older than high school, but still a child and still a person under his care, And so, he locked him in the closet. He threatens him. He not only threatened him, he said, like, horrible things. He said, he talked about his trajectory for life, that he wouldn't matter. He said, I'm going to see you in the streets one day when neither one of us is affiliated with this school, and I'm going to fight you. And he threatened that child. I would say this character was probably 19 or 20, somebody who was probably a couple of years behind in school. He threatened him to a fight right then. He was trying to get him to fight. He was like, punch me. I just need you to punch me. That's all I need. Because he wanted to physically fight this child.
He did.
And could that happen now? I guess it could. But it's just, to me, just like,
they have camera phones now. Yeah. Lock me in a closet if you want to. You are going to jail.
Yeah, that's true.
I have a question for y'all, though, because I know we need to wrap up. Y'all know I never have questions, so this is important. Now, question is, do you all think that Claire and Bender had sex in the closet?
I don't, I literally had this conversation yesterday. Like I literally had this conversation,
God,
and I don't know what the implication was, because she was going in there like,
and he said, "Why are you doing this?
Like this ain't gonna be no questions now."
And she said, "Because I knew you wouldn't."
I'm giving it to you.
And so I don't know. I would be curious to look that up and see what the lore is.
Yeah.
Surrounding it.
Gosh,
because
I hope not.
Because the story will work either way.
Yeah.
Because even if she went in there and just made out with him a little bit, it still would make sense in the context of what was going on.
But would it? He was literally verbally abusive all day. All day he said horrible things to her.
I mean, if we're being honest, first of all, yes, that would absolutely be the circumstance. Because the thing about women who the thing about women, especially women who attract a lot of attention, there's a they call it the 11th man paradox or something like that. There's actually a name for it. But the point is that 10 men come into the room and will give her all the praise, but she'll be interested in the 11th man who gives her, who talks bad to her. And not only is she interested, she's now trying to change
pursuing
his mind.
him. Yeah,
she's trying to change his mind, because
they do that in movies all the time. But I just hope it's not real.
Oh no, it's real. It's real, because it's absolutely
you've
real,
never seen it in your own life.
Because once you,
I mean, not that you have done it, but like people around you, I've absolutely seen that. Like
pursuing someone that didn't pay them attention.
Well, the key is,
or that was abusive.
Because there's very well.
Yes,
obviously in this movie, they're turning up the tropes. But what I'm saying is that, like,
he's from the bad side of the tracks and she's like trying to rebel or something.
But if you have a woman, and I'm just saying, like if there's a woman and like all of them are, all the guys are saying how pretty she is. If you say something, or how nice she looks, all you gotta say is something like, "Oh, you decided to wear that today? Okay, cool." Something like that. Not an overt dish, but just like wait, hold on now. Don't you know I'm dope.
They do that in movies and sitcoms.
But it's also they do, but it's also on the other side of the track as well. This is why so many men. This is why so many men are upset with women. It's because you friend zone all the ones you don't think are conventionally attractive, and you'll have them around or that are giving you attention, but then it's the one that possibly has the attitude, the one that doesn't want you, because there's also this, well, we like a fight, we like to hunt, we like to do these different things. So you're going after her. She clearly don't want nothing to do with you, and now all women are trash. Oh, okay. Well, okay.
Oh gosh, we have so much work to do.
Listen, the psychology behind the culture is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
It's sad that we have that.
I didn't even think that they possibly had sex. Maybe that's because I had my V into college, that I didn't even think they went in there to have sex.
Now talk about a V.
I thought that they were just making out, but sis, she went in there on a mission of some sort. And she very well could have been going down in there.
Because even when they were sitting on the floor, he was still talking. He started talking reckless to her. But I think that's also in women as well. We start to want to fix a man. We want to start to change them. Like, girl, no, he's just evil and he needs some therapy. Keep it moving. Your daddy drives a BMW. Go get somebody that acts like that. And that's the one that the rest of y'all drove there. He walked. So listen.
And what was the giving? She gave her earring to him. And my first thought was, did she give that to him so he could take it to a pawn shop so he can get some money? Because he didn't have any lunch. But then I was like, then he put it in his ear. And I was like, is that a thing where we
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Subliminal.
It probably was a thing in this world. Like they didn't even have to explain it. Just like if there was a movie that we were writing about Shenley, and we would have somebody going to Kennywood and matching pinstripe Bulls outfits. Like that was actually a thing. You know what I mean? So like, and like we wouldn't have had to explain it in our movie, because anybody who saw it would be like, they would get it. So I'm saying it was probably another one of those things that was a thing. But yeah, Brittany, that's an interesting question, because I think that there's probably some videos and like articles about that, because I literally had this conversation yesterday.
I was looking to see, it's like, is her hair disheveled? Is her clothes a little messed up?
But the thing is,
like, she looks normal.
It could have just been a quickie. It could have been, and I'm just telling you that, like, stuff like that definitely happens, especially around that time, because like a lot of, like, you'll find those types of stories where you're in a closet somewhere, or you're at a party and you're in the closet, or you're in a back room, and it gets to a point where they just want to rip the Band-Aid off.
I know we got to wrap. We didn't talk about the music though, and there's one song that is Don't You Forget About Me, y'all. So
I thought the soundtrack was beautiful. It was a very 80s.
Yeah.
It was 80s in the way, it was an 80s soundtrack in the way that if you were making a movie right now and you wanted it to be really 80s, you would have used all the same songs. Like, that's how 80s it was.
You're so right, bro. You're so right. And that song, Don't You Forget About Me, performed by Simple Minds. I want to tell y'all, I have always known that song, and it's not one of those songs where the lyrics make sense to me, and they didn't. But now, because of the movie, it's like, oh yeah. The song says, will you recognize me? Call my name or walk by. Rain keeps falling, down, down, down. Don't you try and pretend it's my feeling. We'll win in the end. I won't harm you or touch your defenses. Vanity and security. Don't you forget about me. I'll be alone, dancing. You know it, baby. Going to take you apart. I'll put us back together at heart, baby. Don't you forget about me. Don't you forget about me. As you walk on by, will you call my name? As you walk on by, will you call my name, or will you walk away? So when you think about those lyrics and you layer them onto the movie, finally the song,
it makes all the sense.
It all comes together, because that's what they were talking about. The brainy kid, at one point, he said, y'all, what happens on Monday? Are we still going to be friends?
That was a great conversation.
It was,
and Claire was like, no.
And
there's no way.
And the crazy thing is, she was making them confront that reality.
Totally.
And it was such a great conversation, because it's like, look, I know all y'all want to say all of this stuff to sound however you want to sound good. But I want you to really put yourself in that moment on Monday when he comes up and walks up to you.
Are you going to say hello? How are you going to handle it? That's right.
It's not going to be, there'll be no questions.
And that was and a great thing about that movie is they didn't give us a resolution to that.
No,
that was the thing. Like, this movie wasn't about resolutions. And that's what made us be able to get drawn into the story, because it was just a quick snapshot.
It's a day in the life.
It was just a day in the life.
And I also want to make sure we point out that the group dynamic, when you put people together and there's a group think, Bender was an asshole from the moment he walked in, knocking stuff off for no reason. But the moment that the teacher was about to like get him, they were all like, no, the door just broke. It just did that. I was like, that's such a real thing where it's like, I don't even like you, but we're all against him. So the door just broke.
Because the thing was that was the interesting part about it, that they were showing how there was a little piece of everybody and everybody.
That's right.
Because if you remember, Bender was the one who saved everybody else, because he, so
he was already going to be in detention forever.
Even though he's a jerk, he still had the honor to save the rest of them.
Yeah.
So it was like, once he did
which
that,
was
it
hilarious.
was like we couldn't let him go down, you know. So
at all.
So that's why it was such. It was very.
It was good
very good. And
when
that
they started
way,
like coughing and banging on the table.
because it was like, yeah, they had all these revelations.
But bro, they had that solidarity even before that.
Before, yeah,
with Bender.
It was right as that because the door was before.
Yeah, it was at the top of the movie where he forced the door closed and broke the door. Yes. And so when the teacher came in for the confrontation, they all just were like, "Oh, we have no idea what's wrong with the door. Maybe screws fall out all the time." So they had a solidarity.
Wasn't there something that happened after it though with Bender?
They immediately had solidarity with each other.
No. I mean, they're students.
When he snuck back in the room is what you're talking about. He was hiding under the
table.
And
that's what I was talking about. That's what I'm talking about.
He squished his head, and they were all like, "Oh."
That's what I was talking about. But the initial, but that's how it would be because you would have the initial solidarity that you're in detention. So like when you're in-house, you already have, I'm calling it in-house because that's what it was for me. But like when you're in-house, when you step into the room, you already have a unifying factor. You're all in-house. Yep. So yes, they all had that. But I'm just saying it's also interesting to because I think the level of solidarity, they got closer throughout the day.
Absolutely.
Which was the point.
It became genuine instead of teacher versus student. Then it became about their relationships.
But it
for
was
sure.
Which is what made that conversation that you brought up so interesting because they did grow together a little bit through this day. But then they had the conversation about like,
but it is what
don't matter.
Yeah.
And it's funny because
where we are.
Chances are on Monday, because there were like I was mischievous. I wasn't bad, right? But I was mischievous. So let's say we put everything on a scale. And let's say mischievous is from 4 to 7. And like you had bad, which is 8 and up, I was around a 6, 7. But like in detention, there's going to be 6, 7s, and there's going to be 8, 9s. Like there's going to be like and as guys with bravado and all of that, like those are the guys who are like we're talking about. Those are the bad boys or whatever.
Yes,
they had flannels
because and some of them did. But I mean, flannels were in a different context, but it was the same thing because, if you had on a blue flannel or a red flannel,
it meant something.
You know what I mean? So, but the point is that
I always wore orange.
You would have in-house, you would have that day, and they might be a little cooler with you, but it ain't like y'all was hanging out on Monday.
At all.
So, like on Monday, they might get. Like something like that or whatever.
But that's it. You're still not
right.
But that's it.
See, and I think though, Brian has protection now. Like Brian doesn't have to worry about getting messed with. He's still a geek, but he doesn't have to be. In my mind, there would be something like we're gonna still mess with geeks, but if it was Brian, it'd be like, man, anybody worried about him. Really, in that way, they're still beating him up. But they're protecting him from further things happening.
I don't know.
There's a little bit of respect, just a team, which I did want to say. I thought that was another thing that annoyed me. There were, at this point, Bender, 4 other tables you could have chose from. You just wanted to assert your dominance and move Brian to another table.
Such a bully to him.
I mean, I think
oh God,
I would like to think that. I would like to think that they had some level of relationship actually established. But I think the point of the movie was showing that after this day, everybody's just going back to how it was. Like, even though, and it's such a thing in life where like you can have these realizations and then just end up exactly back in the path.
Preach.
So I don't know. I hope they were all cool, but I think
not cool.
No, I know exactly.
But just respect.
But I don't.
Disrespect.
I actually think it might have got worse because,
Dang.
and I'm gonna tell you why. Let's say that somebody recognized that the jock was going a little easy. Now he's going to go further in the other direction to overcorrect. You know what I'm saying?
He was
So
already, which is what was already happening.
taping butt
It was
cheeks.
already an overcorrection.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Oh,
so even if he tried, even if he was like, and then we're like, oh, so you're going a little easy on your detention buddy. And then in his mind, he's like, all right, now I gotta, now I gotta go over the top.
I have to drown you in a pool now.
Well, do y'all think Allison continued to put on makeup and put her hair back? Y'all, I hated that part too. I hated the part that Allie, Claire, the princess, put a white shirt on her, put makeup on her, pulled her hair back from her face.
I can feel that you were irritated.
She walks out of the makeup area, and all of a sudden now the jock, he's seeing her for the first time. And by the end of the movie, they're kissing in front of their parents in vehicles. So I was just like, any story that's like, change yourself and then, you'll get to fall in love, I so struggle with. I would have preferred.
That's how life happens, though.
If she had just put her hair back a little, that to me would have worked. Because then that would have been about her saying, well, you know what? Maybe I don't need to act out with this group.
This movie was about real life. And the real life reality is that's how she would have got his attention. That's what would happen.
The other piece of that, as someone who is in fashion, when you start to feel different and better about yourself, how you relate to your clothing, how you relate to your hair, how you relate to these outward things, they change. And it's not because to say that you didn't really care about your appearance before, but there's something that does happen when you see yourself differently. So I'm not going to go to a business conference in sweats, right? I'm going to be more appropriate, but how I feel, how people are treated, it is just different when they have on different types of clothing. And so
that's true.
When I saw that, I didn't necessarily see her changing. And of course, men are more visual, right? They're attracted to women in that way. Whatever all men, how they're attracted to women, it's nuanced, right? But what was different in that moment to me is that Allison knew she was beautiful. So that made the difference in how someone else is perceiving her, because she's not trying to hide herself, right? She doesn't have bangs down her nose, and she's not, in this sweater that is like almost like a blanket with jackets and this bag and frumping around and all these different things, like
stealing stuff.
He's stealing things, right? She is open. Her hair is back. She has taken the black eyeliner off, which there's nothing wrong with that. It's appropriate for when it's appropriate. But hers was more so of a display of saying, I just want attention. I'm eating a Captain Crunch sandwich. So It was like taking those layers off of her for her to be able to see, I don't have to do that.
And I don't disagree with you, sis. You are helping me to understand it a little better. I think even with everything you just said, if she had dressed herself up a little bit, I would have felt better. It was just the way it went down, that it didn't seem like it came from within. I don't know, but sis, everything
I'm a stylist. That's what my job is, though.
Yeah, everything you're saying resonates. And I got to tell y'all, and this is actually a good wrapping note. Aubrey, when you were talking about in our high school, it was called in-house instead of detention.
Well, it was in-house if it was during the day. In-house suspension, if it was during the day. It was called detention I think it was detention if you had to stay after.
Okay.
I don't think we had, I never had to do that, I don't think.
Okay.
But anyway.
Well, the film's title comes from the nickname invented by students and staff for detention at New Trier High School, the school attended by the son of one of John Hughes's friends. So I Googled, why was that movie called The Breakfast Club? Because at no point in the movie does anyone make a reference to the Breakfast Club until the brainy character writes the letter and then signs it The Breakfast Club. But it just turns out that that is a nickname for detention at a school. And so that was the nickname for people in detention at this fictional school that John Hughes put together for this, conceptualized for this movie. So
okay.
So bro, anyway, you brought that home. Y'all, we got a wrap. We're well over, y'all.
Well,
but it's time to vote. Bro,
gets my essay. Yes, absolutely. Letter. Gets my letter. I think the essay, letter, whatever you called it, whatever the term you use, it gets that. Yes.
And y'all, I'm struggling with this. I thought that by the end of our conversation, it would be clear for me. I still don't feel like it's not a locked in for me.
Well, then I would say it's not. I would say it's not because if it's not a classic.
Well, I want to tell you that if you just took the writing and just the story, it would be a clear no for me, because to me, it was not a story that was a big screen story. It was like
after school special.
It was just because it was just, here's a day in detention. Oh, we have more things in common, which is an important lesson, but it didn't feel like a big screen movie. What made it though was like Judd Nelson's performance. I felt like his performance was so strong. I thought Emilio Estevez did a great job. Molly Ringwald. So for me, it was the acting that
was good.
That puts this movie why it becomes to me closer to being a classic. And then I think about the soundtrack. And Britt, can you go? I gotta think for just another second here.
Well, let me tell you.
We never gone out of order before.
This is the first. You're winning.
So
Judd Nelson was so good.
When I came into today and we were going to discuss this podcast, this was I don't care what the symbol is, I don't get it. Yeah, this was not getting my symbol at all, honey. I was like, I fell asleep when I was watching it. But what made me want to give it my essay right now is our discussion. And it is because I appreciate when a movie can do that. It brings other things out when it's meant to. Some movies are just, they are what they are, right? But when a movie can bring out the deeper context and create a conversation that we could have well for hours, I appreciate that. And you do it. So it gets my essay based off of our discussion. But if I was just going based off when we just watched it and then that was it.
That's interesting. Yeah, because I get it. No. I get it. I get it.
All right, y'all. I just asked myself a question that helped me to answer this. Okay, so I started to ask myself, did these characters feel truthful? And I just remembered our conversation from earlier about how they resonated, even though culturally it was distant from my experience, and it still resonated. And so for that reason, because it was able to reach across like the details of life experience and get to the larger humanity connection, yes, this movie will get my letter or essay, as you all have now converted the symbol to become.
Listen, Breakfast Club. If we had numbers, and the only way you could win is if we all had 3, you were skimming the line.
Yeah.
But you got
it. Yeah, but to your point, sis, it's our discussion that helped me to get there. Really, really. So y'all, you've heard it. The Breakfast Club is a classic from the Wright Perspective. Thank you for joining us, y'all. Please tune in next time to the Wright Perspective. Thank you.